One of the things I love about having the flute player is getting to hear them practice periodically in the building, leading up to the Sunday. You'll be sitting there typing or doing whatever you're doing in your office, and all of a sudden this lovely flute music starts drifting through the whole building. And it's wonderful to see it all come together. Thank you. Thanks. Thomas Merton, who was a Trappist theologian, mystic, poet, social activist, monk, and scholar of comparative religion. He was a little bit of everything. Thomas Merton assures us that there is in all things a hidden wholeness. It is certainly well hidden. We live in a world that thrives on comparison, whether it is the house we live in or how many followers we have on Instagram. I think I used that terminology correctly. Our culture is always ready with the next best thing, whether it's a diet or an exercise routine to perfect our soft yet serviceable bodies, a new highlighter or eye cream to make the laugh lines on our faces recede and return to a youthful visage. Perhaps the next best thing is the latest tech gadget or app that promises to simplify your life and ensure you never miss another appointment. Everything is comparison. How we parent, how we relate to our partners, how we define success. There is so much pressure, so much expectation, so much comparison. It is easy to feel split into a dozen or so pieces. And we don't just feel that way, we are that way. And the soul-salving art of bridging the gap between those pieces is what Quaker teacher Parker Palmer explores in a book whose title was taken from Merton. The title of that book is A Hidden Wholeness, The Journey Toward an Undivided Life. And we have this in our library if anybody would like to go check it out. As I said, Parker Palmer is a Quaker teacher and the founder for the Center for Courage and Renewal, which sounds like a lovely place to go. And in his book, he begins by diagnosing the root of this dividedness as a spiritual question. He writes, afraid that our inner light will be extinguished or our inner darkness exposed, we hide our true identities from each other. In the process, we become separated from our own souls. We end up living divided lives, so far removed from the truth we hold within that we cannot know the integrity that comes from being what you are. But I don't want us to think about wholeness as an abstract or as a destination, as something to be achieved. Because that plays into the binary game. Either we do this or we don't. We're whole or we're broken. And this is not a zero-sum game. We don't have to get to wholeness to appreciate its wisdom. Here's a metaphor. If you want more vitamin D, you don't go to the sun. Do you? No. You move your lawn chair out of the shadows and into direct light. And if you want more wholeness, rather than trying to get there, what if we just turned towards it? Wholeness, not a goal so much as it is an orientation, a turning towards, much as plants grow in the direction of the sun. Of course, this is easier for plants than it is for us, because we all have more than one commitment or orientation, don't we? We are committed to our families, we are committed to our community, we are committed to our vocations, we are committed to any number of things, not just the sun. So it's not as easy for us as it is for a flower. Because our choices are not unfettered, they don't exist in a vacuum, but they're intricately woven together. But this orientation toward wholeness, this turning toward wholeness, can shape all of those commitments. So this is a reflection on wholeness, but I want to dive into this related concept of self-authorization. This was a term that a friend in seminary introduced to me. It was a word I'd heard, but I hadn't really thought much about it, put it into context in terms of an orientation toward wholeness. But I think that self-authorization is where wholeness starts. And you can read it in two different ways. You can probably read it in more than two ways, but there's two that I want to point out. One, authorization. When you are authorized to do something, you are given permission. You are given access, right? Unauthorized entry. Suspect will be terminated, whatever. I watch too much Doctor Who. So when you're authorized to do something, you're given permission. And often this permission is sought from others. External motivation, external authorization, right? But with self-authorization, we are giving ourselves permission to live our lives in the way that is most nourishing and authentic to us. You are your own authority. Authority, authorization. You are the authority on you, and your motivation in orienting yourself toward wholeness is intrinsic. Self-authorization is an internally motivated process. 2, there is a word embedded within self-authorization, and that word is author. An author is someone who writes something. Self-authorization not only refers to the permission we give ourselves to live our lives authentically, but it also allows us to become the author of our own stories. I am self-authorized. I have written my own life story. We get to decide the stories we tell about ourselves. We don't get to make things up unless we're writing fiction, but we get to be the ones that decide how our story is told. So under self-authorization, we have permission for authenticity. We can be who we are. And we have the capacity to say what our story is going to look like, which story we're going to tell about ourselves. And if you think that's not really a big deal, think about a time when someone said something untruthful about you, when someone made assumptions about you that were inaccurate, when someone used stereotypes to put you in a box. This is what it means to let the world write your story rather than telling it yourself. The caterpillar is the epitome of self-authorization. No one can say to a caterpillar building a cocoon, hey, could you turn into a bee this time? We know what a caterpillar is supposed to be, and so does the caterpillar. Lucky, lucky caterpillar, knowing what it's supposed to be, and having to only be one thing. Our lives are not so simple, which is why I suggest wholeness as an orientation rather than a goal. It is this commitment to wholeness, and here's why. Here's why I think this is important. The commitment to wholeness is what equips us for life's challenges. The commitment to authentic living fuels our hope when we encounter a world that seeks to break and divide and to rend asunder. It is commitment to wholeness that equips us for life's challenges. The orientation towards wholeness provides a capacity for resilience, and that resilience helps us maintain our orientation towards wholeness. It is a self-fulfilling thing, this orientation towards wholeness. It gives us the strength and resilience to bounce back from life's hardships and continue towards that orientation. Parker Palmer, who I quoted earlier, makes an important distinction between perfectionism, which only ever oppresses the soul, and you will never hear me preach in praise of perfectionism. He makes a difference between perfectionism and wholeness, which liberates the soul. He says, wholeness does not mean perfection. It means embracing brokenness as an integral part of life. Knowing this gives me hope that human wholeness, mine, yours, and ours, need not be a utopian dream if we can use devastation as a seedbed for new life. Palmer argues that the pathology of the divided life isn't something to be solved by reason or abstraction. Its resolution, the pathology of the divided life, the resolution lies in embodied empathy for the human experience, ours and others. And this is what drives so much of our struggle for mutual liberation and social justice. We know that no one is free when others are oppressed. We know that whatever ability we have to orient ourselves towards wholeness should be accessible to others, and it is not always. We share a common truth. To make a world more whole, we begin by orienting ourselves towards wholeness, and we work collectively to ensure this right for all. To author our own stories free from oppression may be the most fundamental function of the worth and dignity that we proclaim as inherent in every human life. So back to that caterpillar. New research has given us additional insight into what goes on inside a cocoon. The conventional wisdom used to be that the caterpillar dissolves within the cocoon and then recombines in some mysterious way and becomes a butterfly. Rather, we have discovered the insect's makeover from caterpillar to butterfly, and never a bee. The insect's makeover is a programmed mix of destruction and growth. Certain cells are dying and body parts atrophy at the same time as other cells, which have been in place since birth, begin to rapidly expand. So rather than a complete dissolution and recombining, what we're seeing is a combination of death and atrophy and growth and new life, which makes it an even better metaphor. I like the original idea because this concept of you have to turn into goo before you can be the next thing feels to me. You have to completely fall apart before you can put yourself back together. But I think this is more realistic as a metaphor, because we are constantly in a state of both destruction and creation, letting go of things and embracing new things. Different parts of us come together to create wholeness, and not just the parts we like. Parker Palmer explains, as you integrate ignorance and failure into your knowledge and success, do the same with the alien parts of yourselves. Take everything that's bright and beautiful and introduce it to the shadow side of yourself. Wholeness is the goal, but wholeness does not mean perfection. It means embracing brokenness as an integral part of your life. And make no mistake, this journey toward wholeness is critical. The more at home in our own lives we can be, the more fully lived our own journeys, the more we can be available for others and to our work in the world. The parts make the whole, and it is always that way. Our bodies are made up of organs and tissues, which are made up of atoms, which are made up of even smaller elements. We live on a planet that is one of many, spinning around a big burning ball of gas, which is one of many, and a galaxy, which is one of many. Parts make the whole. Just as the different parts of us must all be reconciled to each other in order for us to orient ourselves towards wholeness. Carl Sagan, who I spoke of quite a bit last week, one of the most beautiful lines that he has written, the beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. So speaking metaphorically, how are your atoms put together? Remember the charge that I gave to the kids during Time for All Ages? You may not have realized this, but I gave it to you as well. What is just one thing that you might want to change about the story you tell yourself about yourself? What is one thing that you wish your inner voice would just not say? What can you commit to noticing? One of the major turning points in my life and my orientation towards wholeness was I had always thought of myself as a very nice person. And I am a very nice person. I mean, that's not true. But what I discovered was that sometimes being a nice person put me in a position to do something that I did not feel was like the right thing to do, right? Sometimes you want to be nice for the sake of being nice, to avoid discomfort, to avoid hurt feelings, just go along to get along. I don't want to cause any problems. Nice can veer into enabling really easily. So I didn't want to be nice anymore. So what did I want to be? And I came up with what I wanted to be was honest and kind. Because if I can be both of those things, then I can maintain a niceness that is oriented toward wholeness and not towards anyone. So that's just an example that from my own life of something that I had as part of my story that I made an intentional change to, right? We have to have intention about this kind of change. And this reorientation ultimately might shift everything, even the ground beneath your feet. But I promise you it is worth it. And I promise you, you don't have to do it alone. Palmer says in his book, A Hidden Wholeness, if we are willing to embrace the challenges of becoming whole, we cannot embrace it alone. At least not for long. We need trustworthy relationships to sustain us, tenacious communities of support, to sustain the journey toward an undivided life. Taking an inner journey toward rejoining soul and role requires a rare but real form of community. So may it be with you, both within this congregation and throughout the networks of relationship that sustain us all. Our closing hymn is number 391, Voice Still and Small. And we're going to try something a little bit different today. In the same way that parts come together to make a whole within ourselves and within the world, we're going to do a little representation here if you would like to join us. Down here in this basket, I have these strips that we tore during our forgiveness ritual a few weeks ago. I would invite you, if you feel compelled, to come forward either during our closing hymn or during coffee hour after the service, to come and tie a strip or more onto this string as a representation of how the parts of Northwoods make a whole. And if this is your first Sunday, congratulations, you are now a part of Northwoods. In this moment, you are a part of the community that has gathered. I invite you to come forward